Welcome back, everybody. This is Magic with Randy. I am Randy, and today we're going over a modern deck that has rose up when we had the Ennoble Energy takeover in Modern, and is still doing well, and probably going to be one of the decks to look at for taking it to the RCs here coming in the next couple months in February and March. Before we get to all of that, though, as always, guys, if you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, let me know what you guys are playing in Modern, what you guys are planning to take to the RC. Love to hear from you. Let's get into it. So this is Mono Blue Goblin Charbelcher, or Mono Blue Belcher, if you will. This is a deck that rose up when we had Energy kind of taking over Modern as it was. It was a deck that could beat Energy. It kind of played through its disruption. It got to basically do whatever it wanted to because its whole game plan was just getting a Goblin Charbelcher into play and activating it on the same turn. So you get 7 mana into play or get 7 mana available, be able to cast and activate Charbelcher. Notably, if you guys are unfamiliar with this deck by any means, or you don't know what this is all about, I'll kind of break it down and explain what it's playing and what it's doing what it's doing. So Goblin Charbelcher is a 4-mana artifact. You pay 3, tap, you reveal top cards of your library until you reveal a land card. Then it deals damage equal to it deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to any target. If the revealed land card was a mountain, it deals double the damage instead. Then you put the revealed cards in the bottom of your library in any order. Notably, we are playing essentially no lands. Now, obviously, we are technically playing 24 lands in this deck because of the flip cards, thanks to MW3 and then Seagate Restoration. Basically, we have 12 or 24 we can play. 12 of which we have the ability to have come into play untapped. So that's why we're playing the Suppression Ray, Baleen Veil, Drawari's Disruption, Hydroelectric Specimen, Sink into Super, also a good spell just on its own, and Seagate Restoration. So all these 12 here can come into play untapped for 3 life, and then these are always going to come into play tapped. So we're playing 12 lands, or sorry, 24 lands, 12 of which are coming into play untapped. We're playing Lotus Bloom because we have to play this on turn 1 or turn 2. It lets you essentially win on turn 4 theoretically because you'll have 4 lands plus this, play Goblin Charbelcher, activate Lotus Bloom. We are also playing 4 Thundertrap Trainer. It lets us get any spell from the top of our library, for top 4 of our library. So we get to hit, lands or actual spells with this, because the only thing this doesn't really hit is the Specimen and our other creatures here. So we also are playing the Archaeologist, because we get to mill 3, put, essentially a land or a spell into play. And then Tameshi is another one that we're playing, which kind of seems a little weird if you aren't too familiar with Tameshi. So it's a 2 mana and a blue for a 2/3. Whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to their hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, and then for X and a white, you can return a land card to your owner's hand, then return target artifact or enchantment with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So with Tameshi and Lotus Bloom out, we can tap Lotus Bloom for 3 blight, or tap Lotus Bloom for 3 white. Activate Tameshi, bounce one of our lands, get Lotus Bloom back into play, tap it for 3 blue, still have the 2 white floating, and we can keep doing this and making, essentially 3 times the mana to our lands. And it allows you to, Word of Invention, and activate Goblin Charbelcher in the same turn. It gives you another redraw 2 as well, so even if you just have these 2 cards essentially going, plus your lands, you can keep getting an extra draw a turn, which isn't terrible. It is, something. But ideally, you're using this to cast Word of Invention and win the game essentially the next turn. And then we're also playing 2 Spell Pierces, 4 Disrupting Shoal as a blue counterspell. So you can play the 2 blue and the X, but that's not why this is here. We're really here to exile a blue card from blue card with mana value X from our hand rather than pay its mana cost, so that we can counter target spell if the mana value is X. Notably, it is X exactly, not X or less. So if you're going to counter a 2-drop, you have to pitch then a 2-drop. Going to counter 3-drop, 3-drop, 1-drop, 1-drop, etc. We're also learning 4 Flare of the Nile, because it's a free counterspell for us. Being able to sacrifice our Thundertrap Trainers or Archaeologists is huge. And 2 Force Negation, because Force is still a good card. It doesn't protect our combo when we're going off on our turn, but it protects us from things that our opponent would play on their turn. It's also good against, sideboard hate, things like that. And then, like I said, we're playing 4 Word of Invention. This is here to either on, turn 3, go get Lotus Bloom so we can combo off, or so we can use Tameshi to make a lot of mana and then go get Goblin Charbelcher with it. And then, of course, Goblin Charbelcher is our main win con, or really our only win con. We're not beating down with Thunder Trap Trainers and Tameshis. That is a terrible game plan. Don't try it. But this is essentially the deck as a whole. And this deck really sprung up a couple months ago, right towards the tail end of the RCQ season, where energy was kind of dominating and taking over. And when you were running into RCQs, it was pretty much a lot of mainly replacing a lot of energy. So this deck was a really good answer to energy. It played a couple different cards. It wasn't playing the Spell Piercer's main. It was playing Spell Snares and some other things. But this deck was something that was really well positioned against the energy metagame. And now as we're moving through the new time for Modern, where we had the bannings, we had the unbanning, things like that, Goblin Charbelcher is still doing well. It has about a 30 to 55% win rate overall against the overall meta. It does struggle a little bit against the blue-black decks, the blue-black like Frog-Tide decks, things like that, playing the Frog, playing Oculus, things like that. They have counter spells, so it is a little bit weak to that deck as a whole. But outside of that, it's only like bad matchup, and you can still win against that matchup. I did it in my last league I played against. I was kind of testing this deck out for the RCs coming up. I'm going to the one in March, so we're only roughly 3 months away now from that, or a little less really, because it's the beginning of March is when it's coming out, or when you have to be there. So was testing this deck out. It still feels super strong from what I can tell. Obviously I have a very limited sample size on my personal self with playing only these last 5 matches. Also notably, this is a deck that I used to qualify for my RC. The deck is very well powered. It is super strong, and a lot of this is knowing how to mulligan and when to mulligan with this deck as a whole. So if you want to pick this deck up, it's definitely something you're going to need to learn what you can keep, what you can't keep, and be expected to win a lot with Tameshi. Tameshi will just win games out of nowhere that you shouldn't win. There's definitely been times where I had a Lotus Bloom getting ready to come off, a Word of Invention in my hand, trying to figure out how I'm piecing this together, and just top deck Tameshi. Excuse me, or vice versa. I have a Lotus Bloom getting ready to come off. I have Tameshi in my hand and top deck the Word of Invention, and just wins from that turn. So deck is super powerful. Deck is super well positioned, I think, against the meta. The only thing I'm trying to remember, I lost to, I think it was one of the Eldrazi decks I lost to, where I just kind of flooded out overall, and I couldn't get anything going essentially. But I mean, that is a problem that every deck has. Going into the sideboard though, it's a pretty easy sideboard to understand. This is what I was running. So we have 2 Into the Flood Mauls, just a great way to bounce any of the problematic permanents that people are going to bring in to stop you, or to deal with what you're dealing with. 2 Unable to Screens, just being able to take out any creature that might be causing you issues or trouble. We had 2 Circle Distractions in here for the Graveyard Hate. I was playing 3 Harbingers of the Seas, which I'll probably cut this down to 2. I think 3 was one too many. But in there to stop the Eldrazi deck, stop any deck that's just running greedy mana, things like that. Up against the primetime decks, things like that. Spell Snare is a good card, but not good enough, I think, to be in the main. I really like the the Spell Piercers in the main instead. They're a lot more versatile right now, but Spell Snare is definitely good when you are playing against more of the creature side decks, more of the 2 mana tempo decks essentially. So it is a good card to bring in. 2 Consigned to Memories there to once again stop the Eldrazi menace, things like that, all the artifact stuff running around. And 2 Pack Negations when you're running up against either the other combo decks of sorts, or where you really need this kind of like Hail Mary counterspell essentially, where you need to be able to do this so you can win next turn. Because notably with the pack trigger on the stack, so if you have Goblin Charbelcher out and they go to destroy it, and you're able to use Pack Negation on your upkeep with the pack trigger on the stack, where you have to pay the 5 mana, you can activate Goblin Charbelcher in response, and then that way you can just kill them outright essentially. So with the trigger on the stack, activate it, target them, deal damage equal to the number of cards in your library, and just win the game that way. So not too bad as a deck as a whole. I think it's still very well positioned. I do think though, coming up with the RCs we have coming up, I do expect to see Goblin Charbelcher be more towards the top of the meta, or at least do better than people are going to think it's going to do. Obviously, these tournaments are going to be open deck lists though, so it does give a little bit of an edge, or take a little bit of the edge away from Goblin Charbelcher. Charbelcher's kind of biggest factor or biggest component is if you don't know you're playing against it on game one is almost like a buy. It's kind of like how Dredge used to be in the modern format, where there wasn't a lot of graveyard hates in the main deck. So you're playing Dredge game one, they don't know you're on Dredge, and you're just like, cool, Faithless Looting, discard 2 cards, next turn, Dredge 6, draw another card, Dredge 6, and just go off, and your opponent's like, cool, man, I got a bolt. I have a bolt in my hand. I'm glad that you put in 12 power on the field. Yay me. And that's kind of what Goblin Charbelcher gets to do. You get to play, essentially an unfair game that your opponent has no plans for on mulliganing factors. Now, that being said, I think Goblin Charbelcher is still very good game one, even if your opponent knows that you're on Goblin Charbelcher. They don't really have a good game plan for it. Like, especially if it's, any kind of non-blue deck, they can't, they're not going to be able to keep counter spells in hand, so that's going to hurt them. They can mulligan a little bit more aggressively to have a more aggressive start, but, we still have things to jump in the way. We still have Thundertrap trainers and archaeologists to make really good chump blockers. We still have Disrupting Soul to counter spells. We have Sinking the Super to bounce things. We have Flare Denial to counter spells. The deck isn't just like, oh, they kept a 3-land, 4 creature hand, we lost. Like, the deck doesn't just fold to creatures, but obviously it can, depending on hands and everything like that. But I do think this deck is very well positioned, and it's definitely something I'm looking at taking to the RC I plan to go to. We have the next RC coming up here on the 25th of January, so it'll be interesting to see what Europe comes up with, if Mono Blue Belcher is a major part of that metagame. If it's not, how well it does, and whatnot of that nature. But this is definitely a deck I'm looking forward to testing and seriously thinking about taking to the RC. And it's something that if you're looking to go into the RC, or you're qualified for the RC, I should say, not looking to go, but it's definitely something I would look at taking. It's very well positioned in the metagame, and not a lot of hate for it as a whole. Counter spells are your biggest hate against this deck, and you have your own counters to back up against counters. You can play through just about any hate your opponent's going to have, based off your sideboard, as well as just your main deck as well. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys are trying this deck out at all. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, I'll catch you guys next time.